Imagine a vibrant discussion between people that includes both openness and critical thought in the pursuit of truth. The Purchasing Truth podcast is an experience, a journey, an exploration of the impact that negative messages in politics and the media have on our families, community, society, and nation. Join your hosts, Bill Stierle and Tom Hazard, to discover new concepts and language strategies that will reveal effective ways of establishing truth. This podcast series will tackle current events, leadership challenges, healthcare confusion, integrity in business, and many other areas that affect us all. Gain clarity and understanding of the various truth perspectives. Welcome to Purchasing Truth.
Hi, everyone. I'm Tom here with your host, Bill Stierle, and welcome back to the Purchasing Truth podcast. And, Bill, last time we got into a bit of a, kind of a downer, dark place. And
it's hard. Yeah, it was very hard.
Yeah, in money and truth. And, but, we want to, pivot from that now. We talked about discussing truth and differentiation. And now you and I, preparing for this, have talked about truth, differentiation, and tricking the giant, which is really intriguing. I'm looking forward to discussing that today.
Yeah, the hardest part about money and truth, the biggest difficulty is that when this energy exchange thing that we use, which is money, it has the ability to skew truth pretty easily once you get enough of it going in the right direction. People to message anything you want, and then all you got to do is say the thing over and over again. And if no one's there to call you on it or provide a counter message to it that sticks, then what happens is truth and the truth perspective gets skewed in the direction of the person with the loudest voice. The loudest voice in the room, like we were talking about a little earlier, is that if you got the loudest voice and you've got the most money, you can promote something a certain way and leaning it in a direction that you would like it to lean. So that's a big part of it. And that show, Tom, you talked a little bit about it. It was on HBO, correct?
Oh no, actually Showtime, the loudest
Showtime,
voice.
Excuse me. Yeah, the loudest voice.
Yeah, we were talking about that before recording today. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's a part of tricking the giant. And let me show you how this tricking the giant works regarding differentiation. Is, it's something that is used. So when you think of mythology and you think about the character in mythology called the giant, what are some attributes that you would say that you would assign to a giant? Like, describe the way a giant is. So give me some attributes of the giant, very simply speaking. What's a giant?
A giant, certainly is the tallest person in the room.
Huge. Yeah, very big. Huge. Giants are very big. So that's the first thing about a giant. Really big. Okay, second thing about a giant. What's the other thing that's about giants?
Probably inherently scary just because of their scale.
Scary because their scale, right? Because, oh gosh, what are we going to do with this giant? It's huge. Okay. Yeah.
And I think, there's also fear of being stepped on, maybe.
That's correct. You could get stepped on by the giant. If you're not watching, the giant's going to step on you. So you've got to do something about this giant or the giant will step on you. Okay, so now we got to get these two big attributes. Wouldn't you call on the dumb side of the scale or the smart side of the scale, where would you put a giant?
Usually not very smart.
Not really smart, really kind of like on the things. And because they're so big, they're little on the versus fast. Are they either fast or are they slow? They're more on the slow side of the fence, right? They're not very fast. All right, so tricking the giant is something that is in many, many, many mythic tales. Now, before there were psychologists, there were storytellers, there were mythologists. They were shamans that told stories. And the reason why they told these stories is because when an issue came up inside the community, there was a story to deal with the issue. And in the various different stories, it's, oh my gosh, we've got this giant we need to deal with. It's this big thing that's coming. And what are we going to do to get the giant not to come our direction, move the giant that goes in a different direction so it doesn't go towards us? How can we get the giant away from us? How can we get, and in many mythic tales, how can I get the giant to carry me? And one specific story I'm thinking about called The Drummer. The hero is going to the glass mountain, and he's going into the first step he's got to do is cross the forest of giants. That's the first thing. Okay, so this hero's going in there. He's going to go rescue the princess on top of the glass mountain. So he comes into the forest. He says, I'm going into this forest. Yeah, there's giants in here, but big deal. He has a drum. He's going to beat his drum as he's coming into this forest. He's bringing the thing and says, listen, I just want to deal with the giant right away. And as he comes in, as he goes into this huge dark forest, he travels for a little while, and then he comes into this clearing. And he's been beating his drum in the forest. And sure enough, he woke a giant up. And the giant, as he's coming into this clearing, the giant's standing there and says, you woke me from my nap. I'm going to eat you.
Okay.
That's the first thing the giant says to him. You woke me from my nap. I'm going to eat you. And the drummer looks up at him and says, no, you're not. And the giant goes, wait a minute. Hold a second. Now, I'm going to eat you, but first I'm going to pull limb off a limb, and I'm going to eat you limb after limb. And the drummer looks up and says, no, you're not. Even if you're lucky enough to get your slow foot to land on me, I got 100 drummers coming this way. And not only do they have drums, but they also have little hammers. And if you try to sleep, they're going to pound you in the head, and they're not going to let you sleep. And the giant goes, wait a minute. I just want to go back to sleep. See, the giant is just trying to deal with the one drummer. And the giant wants to just eat the drummer so it goes away. But he says, I got 100 drummers coming this way. And now all of a sudden the giant's scared. So the giant looks to the drummer. He goes, I don't want those drummers to come this way. I just want to go back to sleep. And the drummer looks up at the giant and says, listen, I'll make you a deal. If you carry me to the glass mountain, I'll send word back so the giants don't come this way. The giant goes, would you do that for me? And the drummer says, yeah, I'll do that for you. So he lifts him up, puts him on the shoulder, carries him for some distance to a second giant that carries him to another set of different. So he's got to do the same trick. And then to a third giant who has a hat, and he puts the drummer up on the hat, and they're going along through the forest, and they come to the edge of the forest, and they see the glass mountain out there. And the drummer says to the giant, carry me to the top of that glass mountain. The giant with the hat takes him off to the edge of the forest where there's this desert expanse before the glass mountain. And the giant looks at him and says, there's no way I'm going near that glass mountain. Turns around and goes back in the forest. So there's some things a giant will not do. Will not be caught in the open like that. And a giant will never face a big challenge like the glass mountain the way we think it needs to. Now, this little metaphor here is exactly what's happening in media and politics. It's exactly what's happening in all of our constructs in dealing with truth, is that we can't get enough momentum going because most of the people, if I might not call them all out right now, are lost in the forest. And they're trying to beat the drum, but they're not facing the giant that needs to carry them. They're not creating the moments and series of moments that are going to carry. The Democrats are not creating the series of moments necessary to trick the giant. They're stuck in the forest of policy.
Well, this is probably a little bit logical as they jockey for position or getting on the debate stage, or, you know, trying to, you know, they're all arguing with each other, trying to demonstrate why they're the one that should carry the mantle of the Democratic Party, right? It's a bit different. Well, and it seems when sometimes they go after Trump, well, everybody is saying the same thing. Or when they talk about, you know, healthcare, they're all talking about variations of the same thing. It's kind of hard to rise above that, I would think.
Yes, it's kind of hard to rise above that. And notice that you use the metaphor rise above, which is get the damn giant to carry you.
Right.
You got to get the giant to carry you so you get above the forest. And then all of a sudden you're running. Kamala Harris did that in the first debate with her little girl speech and Joe Biden. It tricked the media to carry her, but she had no trick for the second giant to carry her to the next place.
That's right. And have you seen the latest poll that she's dropped significantly from double-digit polling now down to 5%? And so it hasn't been sustaining.
You've got to get the second giant to carry you. You've got to get the third giant to carry. You've got to get them to get you to the edge of the forest. You know, and if you're not getting them to the edge of the forest, and then you got this big expanse of desert that before you get to the Glass Mountain, which is called the primary, when you're getting into the mix, and climbing the Glass Mountain is not something you want to do. There's another trick that needs to be placed at the Glass Mountain, which we will get to in our next podcast.
Oh my goodness. Okay, Bill. Talk about a tease.
Tease. So what happens is that Trump did a really wonderful job of tricking the giant. And the giant that he was tricking is media. He tricked the media giant to follow him. Why did he get the media to follow him? He created a series of dopamine hits for the media to even get the media to have a camera waiting and on and being live with him not even being there. And that was called creating an anticipatory set. This is a very classic sales technique. In order to, and an uncertainty is the second part of the anticipation of, oh my gosh, we're waiting. Is he okay? Is there something that got in the way? We're waiting to hear his message. That is tricking the media giant. The media giant got tricked to cover him. Now, media is not the only giant. There is the educational giant. There's the government giant. There's the business giant. There's all these different giants that we have that are regrettably tricking the massive population to go, you know, to get them to do what they want, which is sleep and not wake up, is what the giant is trying to enroll the person to do. The reason why the voter participation is not being engaged is because for years the government giant has not been able to been in service for the people it's supposed to be carrying. The giant is supposed to carry us, not to make us all go to sleep, or at least half the voting population is asleep with the government giant called, this is too big and too complex for me to follow. This is beyond my vocabulary. This is beyond my ability to understand the complexity of education, the complexity of government, the complexity of, you know, big business and media. So I'm sure your brain is now clicking on all cylinders right now. So what are your thoughts about this whole concept of the giant and, you know, how the tricking of the giant, which we're going to.
Oh my gosh. I mean, yeah, I mean, I'm thinking lots of things, and of course, I'm thinking to some recent interviews I've seen with Trump supporters who, you know, are saying that, well, the economy is really good and employment is really low. I really don't like how he talks or some of the things he says, but and so it seems you know, where they are is, you know, on the economy, oh, the economy's good in general, I'm happy, I'm not going to pay attention to or care as much about these other details.
That's right. I am going to throw these other high value and high stake values under the bus because I want to sleep with the economy giant. And the rush of energy when a huge tax cut comes in like that, and people, rich people get, you know, these checks and they get to now invest and buy back stocks and play in the stock market and so on and so forth. It's again honoring Wall Street, starving Main Street. Okay.
Right. Well, of course, the president would try to have you sleep through the Wall Street portion of it, right? And
the great distractor is that Wall Street is what the economy is. It just isn't. I mean, 40% of Wall Street is owned or is invested by the top 0.1%.
Right.
That tells you right there that everybody that's not in the 0.1% has no skin in the game. Just they don't. There's no skin. There's no things. But the giant, the media giant, keeps going towards the stock market because the media giant and the business giant are playing off of each other, pretending that, because guess what? That's where all the money is. Why would I ever wake up the 100 drummers and get them to come after me with little hammers and little drums?
Right. And most recently, one of the most interesting things that I think is, again, and a good example, Bill, of not only the media giant, but I don't know, maybe another aspect as well. If you heard Trump at a recent rally saying, you need to elect me because if you don't, your 401k is going to go down the tubes. Something to that effect. I'm not quoting exactly, but
right. That is a trick the giant message. He's tricking the masses to stay with him by inherently doing the same thing as the character in our story did, which was lie to the giant. Lying to the giant, people are actually okay if you lie to a giant because it's big and dumb and I want to go where I want to go. It's like literally a 10-year-old or 12-year-old mindset that gets hooked into, well, if just so the giant carries me, it doesn't matter if it's not carrying these other people. You know, it's not really particularly good for government, or it's not really good for the population to get these different giants to play off each other. But you know what? This is the way that this one works. This is the way that this thing works. And regrettably, the Democrats don't have any idea because they would actually frame it that way. They'd frame it the way I just did it. Do you see how interesting it got when I said, you know, that Wall Street is doing this and Main Street is starving? That is a counter giant message. That is, uh-oh, we better pay attention to these little people. We better pay attention to this politician because they know what they're talking about. There's nothing like Barack Obama tricking the giant by literally saying to the American public and being on camera, yeah, it's going to take about $700 billion to right the economy.
And when so he portionalized that down from what people feared it might be, right?
Right, because the real number was $1 trillion, but they picked $700 billion of public money to bail out private Wall Street businesses that were floundering and dying right there on the vine.
So, Bill, would Barack Obama saying, if you want to keep your doctor, you can keep your doctor, be another tricking the giant?
That is. If you want to treat the doctor, you can keep your doctor. Well, of course, it's too complex. The giants, yes, they're not going to say the truth all the time. The truth is not as important here. And yes, people are going to call you on the truth. From a detail standpoint, you can pick and edge and wedge somebody. But if you are not speaking the message, especially for the population, of stability and reassurance that things are going to work out for all of us instead of for you. Well, I believe it's going to work out mostly for all of us. That's why I'm voting for you.
No, that message doesn't fly, does it?
No, it doesn't fly, because the giant's not going to. He's going to like, no, I'm going to eat you. I'm going to pull you. I'm going to pull you limb from limb. I am going to take and put you in. And see, the problem is they don't know what the second, Camilla Harris, all the other. They don't know what the second sentence is. They don't know what the next message is. They don't realize that they've got to trick the giant to keep them floating. And here it comes. Trump tricks the giant every morning with a tweet.
Absolutely.
He gets the eyeballs to move in his direction, even if it's controversial and even if it's not true. Truth. Now, the media giant struggles with truth, on its own behalf, because its belief structures about what its role is and what its identity is different from, they're going to talk about the truth, but they've also got to, because they're in bed with the business part of it, they've also got to watch out for, if they talk about too much truth, they lose major advertisers. And guess what? The business giant, he starts eating them by pulling funding. So these giants are playing off of each other. And what's getting lost is, and what's lost is truth. And because of that, the messaging of an inspired vision, a compelling mission. See those two things?
Yes.
Those two things are missing in the Democratic narrative. Even though the Democratic narrative, it would be healthier for the country, the Republican narrative is healthier for the more of the rich and the powerful and the powers that be. And yes, I could see the good reason why Mitch McConnell is taking Russian oligarchs' money for, to put, a big aluminum manufacturing plant in there, because in his state, and taking money for that. And not, it's not going to be in his slogan. I took Russian money in order to build a factory for Kentucky because of how expensive it is, to get Americans company, and they don't want to gamble about this. But this Russian oligarch has all this money and is going to hire all these people in my state, in my impoverished state of Kentucky, in this part where nobody wants to come and build anything. This person's going to build something.
Yeah, so he won't, he'll trick the giant. He won't talk about that it's Russian money at all.
No.
He's probably gonna even distance himself so much from it to say that, during my last term, we've increased employment in Kentucky by X. We've increased wages by X, regardless of where it comes from, right?
That's how he's tricking the giant. Also, the long-term play and the long-term challenge is something that the business giant has been doing and eating up politics for a long time by, and we talked about this around money, is the giant is, if I take Boeing as another, like big business as a giant, they're going to manufacture their plane in all the different congressional districts that they need to, in order to employ the people, in order to get the votes, in order to bring those higher paying jobs into those communities, in order to get the votes they need, in order to get the funding they need, in order to build the planes. And there's the vicious cycle of money, votes, employment, money, votes, employment, tricking the giant narrative and keeping it moving.
Bill, so I really like this metaphor of tricking the giant. And I wonder, another thing that's in our news cycle a lot now in the last few weeks has been, these two mass shootings that took place in El Paso and in Dayton, a couple weeks after recording this. And there's a big gun debate. And I saw a very interesting poll recently. Even it was a Fox News poll, which I'm sure irks Trump, but it says that now fully 67% of Americans favor new legislation on either background checks or banning assault weapons. And that, for any of you that may be math deficient, is more than 2/3 of the American public believe this now, which is a staggering number of people. And yet there's this giant, well, I don't know if it's a giant.
Well, the giant, the NRA giant, the NRA giant is a big giant, because it's the NRA giant, which is funded by the gun manufacturers giant. So you also gotta be careful about how you wake up the giant. You just gotta scare it to carry you, not piss it off so it eats you. I mean, people piss off the giant and it eats them.
Yeah. Oh, well, so I wasn't sure if the NRA is the giant or the NRA is tricking a giant. I mean, they seem very good at it, right?
Yes. Yeah. It's one giant whispering into the ear of another giant, whispering into the ear of another giant. And all the giants are like, they're great because they just eat people's lives. They eat the environment. They really just gobble up, what the other giant is saying to them. Monsanto talking to the EPA.
Oh yeah, about Roundup, right? Well, among
Roundup,
other things. That is
and
cancer left and right.
So Tom, when the giant is, let me pick it up. The giants start working off of each other, and they start eating each other. This is what business consolidation looks like. This is, AT&T buying HBO, buying it, what happens is these different companies buy each other, and it's giants eating giants, because they start running out of food, and the food that they're starving for is, how do I leverage cash flow, and how do I leverage influence? How do I get another giant in to start being on my team? So a food giant will be in alignment with another giant. So you take Amazon and they buy Whole Foods. One giant just bought another giant.
Sure.
Now, what happens is that allows all kinds of nifty things that two giants can do to talk to each other. Is it problematic? Well, it's problematic for the grower at the bottom of the food chain. It's problematic for the guy that's the person that's selling the tomato or making the product, because now they own the distribution piece all the way from, hey, you want to order something and you want it right now, or you want to go pick it up. It's over at Whole Foods in a locker for you.
Yeah.
Which is it's like a little unsettling, because that's the way giants do, is that giants will work to figure out a way to eat the environment, and they're going to eat the resources and they eat creativity. Giants always eat creativity.
Oh, wow.
Giants eat entrepreneurs.
Wow.
giants eat low income people.
So the entrepreneurs are probably the prototypical person trying to get multiple giants to carry them to the
That's
glass
right.
mountain.
That's exactly what. That's good. That's excellent.
Well,
that's
so,
yeah.
So let's tie this to some of our
Yes.
current political climate, and I think I have a way to do that. So we have right now there are some signs that maybe this economy, which Trump has been riding to his great benefit, saying that, oh, don't pay attention to all this stuff that's different from the presidential norm, because the economy's so good. Of course you love me, all that. Well, we're starting to get some signs that maybe the economy may not be staying so rosy for him, and forget going into all the reasons why, but they're just accept for the moment that seems to be the case. So might you have, while you're trying to get the giant to believe the economy is great, and then you start having some signs that it's not, things could get out of control, and the giant can't be so easily tricked at that point if you're Trump. So I want you to comment on that. And then on the flip side, how can the Democrats start to trick the giant?
Okay, so the first I'm gonna actually side with Trump on this.
Okay.
And what I'm going to side with Trump on is that sometimes when he says don't believe the media, he's actually saying, listen, the media giant is working against me right now. Don't believe that giant. And I'm going to side with him a little bit, because the economy is a lot bigger than Trump as a leader and or as a policymaker. And the giant is already plodding along, the capitalist giant, with all of its very different minion giants that are supporting the capitalist giant that's walking the way it is, called the USA giant, which is a whole nother set of problems to it. So he's kind of right. Don't believe, there's like the fake news sometimes, as he's calling fake news, it's here's a counter message, but you can't, and he doesn't really get this, although he's had a successful career of doing this. He doesn't, once you do a scorch earth kind of narrative, which is what he's doing
when he calls everything fake news,
his brand and his legacy will crumble very quickly after he's gone, just like Roger Ailes and Fox News. Their legacy, as soon as you do scorch earth narrative, the legacy crumbles, because the giant, nobody wants to feed the giant anymore. It's like, I'm not going to feed Fox News, as Senator will say, because I don't want them to have advertising money. I'm going to starve that giant. I'm going to starve it openly. And yes, you would like me to go on there, as Bill Maher would say, go on there, because you've got to get those 100 drummers that are listening to the Fox News narrative. You got to go to where they are,
right?
And insert a narrative that is going to, you got to trick that giant. And Bill Maher's correct about this. But also Elizabeth Warren is correct for not going on. I am going to starve the money out of the giant. See, both of them are right. But the question is that which one of them is going to get the traction? Because Fox News is never going to put Elizabeth Warren on there. All of a sudden she's going to be in, and all the voter on Fox News is going to remember her as is Pocahontas, is right. the gaffe, that the trick, the belief that she had from her grandma and the story and blah blah blah, right?
Right.
So the Democrats need to trick the giant by doing some similar things that you and I are doing here when we're using phrases and metaphors that and initiatives that set the vision and convince the mission. We want to set the vision. Here's the vision of where we're going. Elizabeth Warren does an okay job and Bernie Sanders does an okay job of setting the vision. They have they're where their trouble is that they're not enrolling people behind the mission fully. Otherwise, their numbers would be killer. They'd be really huge, and the giant would carry them all the way where they're going. So Bernie's been at it for so long that he is still on point. It's the same message he had 40 years ago about the rich and the well-to-do, and this is what's happening, and we've been hijacked, and nobody knows this better than I do. And see, this is what you guys are doing. This is you're stealing money from the social net, and you're putting it in the pockets of rich people. I mean, that's really basically it.
Yeah, it is.
Oh, I forgot to mention one of the giants that we all have got to the religious giant, the spirituality giant, the giant of all the different religions. Those are also giants because they enroll and hijack and have people following them and their belief structures. And those giants need to start moving in a direction too. Trump did a great job of hijacking that set of giants to believe that this person that is, outside of it, all he did was quote, 4 Bible verses poorly. And everybody goes, oh, he's in. He's got the R. He's in our team. He's this. Yeah, he's done all this other stuff, but it's really not that true. Those other 14 women are lying, and all the things he said out of his mouth aren't really true. And we can really, that was just locker room talk. Locker room talk.
Back to the locker room talk.
He's got right. And that was Hillary Clinton's miss. That's when she would have been elected. All she had to do is, so we're going to go with a middle school attitude about a locker room talking, and you'd like a middle schooler to run the country because that's what you're saying right now. And then
that would have been so much better than arguing the fact we all know it wasn't locker room talk, which is really all that she said at the end.
That's all she said. We all know it wasn't locker room talk. No, call it what it is. So you would like to be a middle schooler and have a middle school attitude, the respect towards women. Is that where you want to go? Now, he might come back with, well, your husband. Listen, I have my husband in line right now. That's all she had to say. It would have been, whoop! It would have been like all the women that would have voted for Trump would have went for her. Why? Because all she had to say is exactly what she did. My husband's in line right now. You're not.
My husband came into alignment with, whatever. Yeah.
That's right. And it was over 3 sentences. Why are people not knowing the tricking the giant? People do not know how to utilize language, Tom. And that's the thing that is the biggest thing. And the next time that we're going to talk about, we're going to take this giant and this drummer to get to the top of the glass mountain, because that's the next thing at the base of the glass mountain is where truth needs to have this really strong differentiation narrative that gets the person to the top of the glass mountain without getting killed.
So is the first glass mountain really to talk about the mountain of winning the Democratic nomination? Is it the fight between all of these people trying to become the nominee, and then there'll be another glass mountain later on for the presidency? Is this like the 7 summits? Because always another one.
That's an interesting metaphor, but actually, but that metaphor partially works. But actually, on top of this glass mountain, there's a hag that's on there that the drummer has to face.
Oh,
the hag is very big and very dangerous, and gives the drummer some tasks that are insurmountable.
Oh.
And that's the thing that's really that the drummer needs to work on, whether it's whatever candidate is that figures out how to get to the top of the glass mountain, because you got to trick the hag also. Well, it's not as much of a trick. You have to participate in the hag's tasks, and in order to move through a very, very difficult time at the top of the glass mountain.
Wow.
And that's where all the candidates are about ready to face. They don't know that they're going to do that. They think that they just got to keep shaking hands to get the 100 drummers. They are lost in the policy forest. They have no business in the policy forest. They got to start moving towards vision and mission.
Yeah. Vision, mission, and demonstrating leadership qualities that are going to motivate people to support them. Is that right?
Yeah, it's Trump. Do people that voted for Trump believe that he's the smartest person on the planet?
No way.
So the next time, let's go and take a look at what it takes to get to the top of the glass mountain, and we might even take a look at what the hag is going to do. I'm not sure if we'll get through all 3 of the tests that the drummer has to go through next time, but we are going to figure out how to get to the top of this glass mountain. And whether it's Pete Buttigieg or Kamala Harris or Cory Booker or Joe Biden or Bernie Sanders, all the front runners need to know how to handle these big energies.
Boy, I'm excited to talk about that some more, Bill, and I hope they listen. Those candidates, somebody's got to get some communication skills here in order to make it.
That's right. That's the big thing. That is very, very important. Yeah.
Okay, right. Bill.
More to come, Tom. Thanks a lot.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you for listening to this Purchasing Truth podcast. We trust that you have enjoyed this engaging and thought-provoking conversation. Our hope is that you've received value, found clarity, and broadened your truth perspective in this episode. If you did, leave us a review or visit our website, purchasingtruth.com. Join us again for another informative and content-rich discussion here at the Purchasing Truth podcast. Don't just accept whatever information comes your way. Join the discussion. Discover your own voice. Purchase your own truth.